Latin Americans make up 19.1% of all Americans in the United States. It's a large number. That's close to 1/5 of the total population in the country. That's a lot of people. They're also the second fastest growing demographic or ethnic minority in the country. They are second only to Asian Americans. And those are all interesting facts, considering that the representation in the media is not so great. So today we're going to talk about that. Welcome to my channel. My name is Alexis Bravo. I use this platform to talk about things that I find interesting in the hopes that you may find them interesting too. Today we're going to talk about Latinx representation in the media. And we're going to do that, or at least we're going to start doing that, by evaluating some social theories or using them to evaluate the evidence that we're going to hear later on. So the first social theory that I want to talk about is social identity theory. So social identity theory is the idea that we form our identities based off of the interactions that we have with other people who share our identities. And this could occur through many different types of identities, right? This could be your sex, this could be your gender, this could be your religion, your orientation, or your race. In this case, it's the particular ethnicity of Latinx people. It's being a Hispanic American, or Hispanic, being of Hispanic origin. The next kind of concept that we're going to look at is representational studies, and that's exactly what it sounds. That there's studies of the representation of a group of people, of a community, of a person. The idea behind representational studies is that if a person, a group, a community is represented in the same way, consistently, without fail, in the same way, other people from outside of that community, from outside of that culture, from outside of that person, will use that information as a basis upon which they can form judgments, opinions, understandings about that community, person, or group that's being represented. This can be great. This can also be terrible. It depends on what representations are being given, and unfortunately, Latinx people are not given the best representations. But to further kind of draw out what kind, or like at what level of representations are these representations being particularly harmful or incorrect. We're going to look at two criteria, right? So the first criteria is accuracy. The second criteria is utility. We want to make sure that the representations that we're getting from the media about Latinx people are accurate representations. Like they actually depict that entire culture in the way that they really are. Second is utility, right? Are those depictions, are those portrayals, are those representations we're getting of Latinx people constructive? Are they useful? Are they able to benefit that group, that community? Are they able to benefit the community at large, made up of all of these different identities? And we find that unfortunately the answer to both of those questions is no. But let's get into the evidence, and I'll have you make up your own mind about that. The literature on this is pretty straightforward. It's pretty unanimous in this regard. Latin Americans are underrepresented, right? So when we look at accuracy here, we're not looking at the actual numbers. Take, for example, management in television, right? So they make up 3% of all television managers in the media. Second, we can look at the leading roles in films that Latinx people get. That makes up about 1.4% of the total Latinx representation. That's also minimal. The third that we're going to look at is, in journalism. It has to do with the total amount of newsroom employees in newspapers, and that total number comes out to 4.2%. If we look at an analysis done on Jane the Virgin, a study that was conducted by an author, by a researcher, they determined that the total amount of characters that were present, or the majority of the characters that were present in the show, were white. They were of Caucasian origin, which means that they weren't, representing, first of all, the theme of the show, which was Hispanic in nature, accurately, and of course they weren't representing the actual demographic accurately. So when we look at accuracy, we're seeing a complete failure on behalf of the media. They're not able to give us a accurate representation of the people according to the actual numbers in which they exist. The second thing that we're going to look at, which also is part of the first, is utility, or at least the evidence is part of the first, and the evidence has to do with stereotypes, right? So there are really powerful stereotypes at play in the Latinx community. The top three that I want to mention are the illegal alien, the criminal, and the hypersexual Spitfire, right? So we have been bombarded by the media in terms of their depictions of Latinx people as illegal immigrants. Immigration's been this really big problem in politics for a long time, and we put a lot of blame and heat on Latinx people in this country. We see them as crossing the border as a major threat, a major issue, and we see them as these inassimilable foreigners with like really thick accents that are uneducated for the most part. That's kind of our idea of an illegal immigrant, right? And then there's the criminal aspect, which is tied into the illegal immigrant aspect, or the illegal alien aspect, and the criminality has to do with cartels and gangs in Los Angeles that for whatever reason politicians on the national level have determined are fitting descriptions of the Latinx population at large, which, as we know, is false, because you can't really generalize anything like that. You can't generalize anything to all people. It's a logical fallacy. Third is hypersexual Spitfire. So the idea that Latino men, Latino women, they are obsessed with sex in some kind of way, and they are extremely conflictive, argumentative, or aggressive even. That's a very popular stereotype that's really engrossed with the Latinx community. All three of those stereotypes and all of the other stereotypes that are promoted by the Latinx community, or are provided to the Latinx community, about the Latinx community, are really negative. They're not productive. They're not constructive to the community. And a lot of the problem has to do with, children trying to form their identities in schools and whatnot. They'll come in with this idea, and they'll have all of these other pressures from around them, telling them what they should be like, what they are most likely going to be like, and they won't be able to imagine something different from them. In other words, these kind of stereotypes creates this limited caricature through which Hispanic Americans or Hispanics, Latinos in the United States operate through. And that can be really, really, really profoundly negative. There is a solution though, and the solution, it kind of comes naturally from the idea that it affects children, especially in schools, and that's education, right? If we teach students how to challenge stereotypes, how to identify them and then challenge them, we are able to give them a better hold on them, and we're able to better equip society at addressing them. And this is really our only solution, the only remedy to curing the problem of negative representations in the media for Latinx people, and probably for other minorities as well, right? The only thing that I will say is that we should be careful about assigning blame in terms of who should be found responsible for the kind of generalizations being made, the kind of stereotypes being made. It's one of those things where, I was just recently in North Carolina, and the majority of people there were white. Not everyone in the United States is going to know that these stereotypes aren't true, or that it's as big of or that underrepresentation is as big of a problem as it really is in the country, because only 13 of all of the states in the United States have over 1 million Hispanics living in them. So the only things that we should be a little bit careful about assigning blame, because it's not necessarily anyone's fault at hand. These are just things that have emerged, patterns that have emerged over time, and will likely change over time as well. So, and I hope they do. I think they will. We're all fast learners here, so things change. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, share, or subscribe. And I will catch you next time. Take care.